Hello, adventurers, and welcome to another episode of Hearths and Crafts, where we spotlight the heroes behind the scenes of your favorite WoW experiences. And so set your Hearthstones, because here we have much more content on YouTube as well as Patreon for all of your favorite podcasting platforms on as well, where you can find much more bonus content. Today, we're joined by the visionary community lead of GFG, a name that's become synonymous with learning and epic group content. This community has evolved from its rowdy roots into a powerhouse of support and camaraderie, and GFG now stands as a beacon across NA and Oceanic realms, offering weekly learner raids, heroic prog runs, mythic plus keys, all wrapped in a chill, welcoming, and just awesome vibe. Whether you're here for like as a fresh-faced player and just or a seasonal raider, GFG is a mission a focused, driven community group that's just going to be doing great things in the future, especially with this new expansion coming along. You guys got 15,000 members as well. That's just not like a small number whatsoever. That's huge. And so they've built an absolute movement. Welcome, welcome, welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. You weren't kidding when you said you had a little bit of an intro there too. I don't need to say anything. You covered it all.
So just a brief intro for yourself. I mean, like, well, how did you? I mean, why are we here? You know, to begin, but
Yeah.
Also, like, what brings you here today, and what kind of stuff has brought you to this point?
Yeah. Funny enough, I'm one of probably the newer members of those of us that are in kind of the leadership within the server. The server the community was started by Jimmy Joints. And funny enough, he always liked to joke that he didn't play World of Warcraft. He just stumbled into making a World of Warcraft community with 15,000 members.
Yeah.
And, you know, part of that, he not a huge WoW player. He moved on to some other avenues, some other things he wanted to focus on. And so now we all, myself, Lilith, Galk, and Plushy have kind of split his job amongst the four of us. And that's kind of where we're at. I joined specifically to support him because longtime WoW player. My wife, actually, she joined the community as a lead, and I heard her talking about how awesome it was. I had basically given up on raiding because it was just a slog. The whole, group finder, and you basically have to be overqualified to get an invite to a group, and I didn't have the time for that. And she told me about this great community, and this crazy kind of manic in the nicest way guy that had created it, and that he always burns himself out. And I was like, hey, I've kind of got a head for admin type stuff. It seems like a good place. I'll see what I can do to help him not burn out. And fast forward 3 seasons, and here we are, rebranding and going strong. 15,000 members, like you said.
Yeah, no, I think it's actually fantastic that it started from basically people who were ready to quit the game or were kind of done with it currently. I think there's a lot of community members who share that sentiment, where it's unfortunate, but a lot of people, I think, when they join or they first join, they think the community will kind of come to you. There's going to be a space for you. You hit level 80, and then that's when it unlocks. The game opens up and your avenues open. But in reality, it's a search bar and then a couple pending applications till you get a guild, and it's not really necessarily a quality. It's usually a quantity thing. People just want to pump a bunch of numbers into their guild, and at most you can find somebody or you can run into somebody and do like a guild application. But like you said, high standards. It's usually a very tough process to get into a decent guild, especially one that has like any sort of like mythic prog, or they're trying to push for say being like top 200 or something like that, if they're trying to do something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to get into any community, like not even, like a competitive guild or something, just because community is something that I think we've lost as the game has grown.
Right.
Used to, I feel like I got a lot closer to guildmates that I had a long time ago versus now. It's like you start a new character, you get an invite to a mega guild within 5 minutes of playing, and no one barely ever talks. You're still pugging with group finder. So yeah, it's not just trying to find a raiding guild, but just community period. It's a MMORPG, but the massively multiplayer part, you're just playing next to other people
Yeah.
super often. You're not actually
I play in the
interacting
proximity
with
of other people, you know, it just
Yeah, yeah, we're all gonna get together and do this raid in silence, just in the same group. So yeah.
honestly, I think that it hits a nail on the head. I think that there's a lot of people who struggle to do that. I would argue that, I mean, this is not going to be my argument for everything. Is it okay if I call you Steve? By the way, is Steve
Yeah,
okay?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. Steve is
It's not
fine.
going to be my argument for everything, Steve. I promise. But honestly, the thing that I always speak about in my videos is that it's somewhat Blizzard's fault. You know, we we have to talk about how, I mean, this is as soon as, or I guess as late as 2019 when Classic first was released, I suppose. When I was able to make groups, I was able to lead groups, and then immediately able to find guilds and find communities where it seemed to fall into place naturally. Now, I think that's partially due to the fact that Classic didn't have as many routes as there is now. So through that limitation, you're kind of forced to expand yourself. And so I found the perfect guild for me. We raided up until Nax. I played as a daggers warrior. I got some decent parses here and there when I wasn't lying on the floor warming it. But honestly, it's that kind of community I know can still exist, I guess is what I'm saying. And it seems like somewhere in the translation, because I know 2019 is a little while ago, but it's not like forever ago. It's not different retail ago. How come, like, or I guess, why do you think then I was able to find those communities seemingly like on repeat, like whether it was like level 30, level 40, especially as a warrior when there was tons of them in Classic, as you probably are aware, as opposed to retail where I can't find any like that are, I guess, just out there, I guess, outside of really having to search.
I I think it's just a bigger problem than just WoW and Blizzard. Not to get like all society type thing, but I think we're just
Yeah.
people just generally are trending more toward. I mean, you mentioned 2019. Something very significant happened pretty shortly after 2019, where
Yeah.
a lot of the entire world basically shut down with the pandemic, and I think that we're still dealing with the effects of that in some ways, and I think it comes across even in virtual spaces. People aren't as big of the community isn't as big of a focus for folks anymore. The other thing too, though, is Classic is automatically like Classic has more community, I think, because it's like a create your own adventure more so than retail, which is pretty on rails. Like you need community to some extent because you don't have a random dungeon finder. You can't. There's much less that you can do in the game in Classic without interacting with someone. Like basically you have leveling and grinding. Now that is a big part of Classic, but even then, people are going to join groups to quest more efficiently together. Sometimes it hurts you more than it helps in Classic,
Yeah.
but and I don't think that that's necessarily as a game design that Blizzard went for. I think it's just that when Classic was around, I can only imagine it wasn't as easy and the technology wasn't as straightforward to code the systems we have now. We're looking at decades of development, and this is the product of it. And I think that's just like a side effect is that we lost a little bit of that community connection because it doesn't exist as much anymore. Things are somehow more accessible, but in making things more accessible, you've kind of lost some pieces here or there. But in the grand scheme, I think it has built a niche for communities like GFG. And I think that is, if I had a choice between systems like Classic, where they're either by design or just by the practicality of how the game is built, there aren't so many features and you have to kind of create the story yourself with the people that you play with.
Mm.
If I had to pick between that and where we're at now, where we have absolutely incredible environments, incredible boss fights, lots of systems to help players along and make the game more accessible, but then maybe it's a little bit harder to find community, I would pick where we're at now. But acknowledging that's probably because of GFG. I probably wouldn't be playing WoW if I didn't have that community already.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, this is just like a gaming content, like gaming question in general, because honestly, when it comes to video gaming, if it's a multiplayer game and you don't have someone to play with, you're probably not going to be playing that game very long. It's hard to play always solo. Some games like WoW require it, so I think that's one of those things. And I like taking the step back to. I understand that, like we all understand that. I mean, like when we talk about classic WoW, it's a game that succeeded through limitation. A lot of things that like the Blizzard team will like to say, especially during like expansion announcements, is the most successful thing that WoW derived from its early on success was the fact that you were able to create your own experiences from the game. It wasn't the game design itself. It was the fact that they did not expect so many interactions to happen that weren't part of the game's design. And that's what defined it. I think that what you could say in a way is that retail tries to coddle that into existence sometimes, where it's like, here's the reward, here's a gimme, please create good experiences. But with that said, if you don't mind the participation trophy aspect of it, I think you can get past that and get into a community and actually get that enjoyable experience. I think unfortunately sometimes that's a turnoff to some people where they're just like, oh, I just get this gimme. We were just talking about delves. When you do a delve and you get your treasure map, you get a free hero piece. If you're not unlucky like I am, you haven't gotten 5 belts in a row. You've gotten some pretty decent world boss drops, as well as random pieces that have been worthwhile keeping. So it's a lot of people would consider that to be a gimme, but then on this other side, I know things like hard mode Tazavesh exists too. So I'm not saying that those things don't exist on the same side, I guess, same side of the same coin, possibly opposite side of the same coin. So I know those things exist, but I 100% agree that community is that way.
At the same time, though, the gear thing you just mentioned, a lot of people do say like, oh, gearing is too easy. But you just mentioned you've got 4 or 5 belts in a row. Blizzard could very easily have acknowledged the fact that there is a very strong belt, and they could have very simply just taken belts off the loot table for so like there is still that aspect of similar to when you look at Classic, where you're like, this item for whatever reason, I haven't played enough Classic to think off the top of my head, but I know they exist. Like, it wasn't necessarily designed for my class, but it is the best item I can get, and it's from some obscure random place, and some people will play for weeks and months and never see that item drop. So I think we still have that level of randomness, but I think that it all comes back to community, and like retail WoW is tough to play without a community unless you're just engaging very surface level. Like, that's how I used to play. It come in at the start of a season, do the story, get the gear that I can get easily, so do raid finder basically. Maybe jump into a few keys. If my wife, she plays and she's a tank, so I get the tank queue, so maybe jump into a few keys and tag along with her, but that's it. Like, and that's what, 2-3 weeks of play versus when you have communities. Now that I've got GFG, I'm playing the full season, and you almost have to force yourself to take a break, or else you're just burnt out on playing WoW.
I will say, yeah, no, I'm actually thankful that I do content creation, because at least I'm able to take breaks on certain days. I'm like, I have to make a video, otherwise, like, it's not gonna. I'm gonna be playing, trying to gear grind for the rest of the season, and then by the time I'm done, I gotta prepare for next season. So there's always like another. I would say, in a way, like, this is kind of like a on the moment thought, so I apologize if it's not well formed, but basically it's created a new chase item. Like, I think Classic was known for having much more chase items than current retail WoW. Retail WoW, of course, we still have Sack Brood, so I'm not gonna like ignore that it exists. But I think that the chase item has now become the sort of the next barrier, the next power creep in a way, the next power gain, or the next season's just reset. So I think that there's sort of always something to chase at the end of that. So there's always something to do. I think that's why a lot of people end up leaving. But speaking of LFR, since you mentioned it, I think LFR is that perfect space to kind of mention where GFG comes in as a community, because when you think of LFR, it's a raid leaderless grouping in a way. I mean, there might be somebody who speaks out during it, but I I'd be plumb surprised to find it. So I mean, raid leading in general, why do you think some people have gone, LFR is my max and I'm not going to go beyond that? Do you think it's because being a raid leader is kind of like that thankless position that doesn't really reward the leader themselves, and or it's just easier for the player to just hop in and just kind of coast along the lines, just kind of take it easy and like, hey, I got the gear and I did the end game content. I saw the cinematic like everyone else. So what do you think is the reason why maybe raid leaders might be disappearing?
I think there I think it comes with the kind of decreasing community that we see, because you know the same reason that you or I may be less apt to go through the steps to try to look and find a community, people who would be raid leaders are probably less motivated to take the steps to like put together the group. And there's a lot that goes into getting a group together and putting together a group, and the difficulty scale in retail WoW, at least it goes up so sharply as you go from LFR, which like you're not learning anything in LFR. You see like a general, like the LFR fights. So one of my biggest complaints about LFR is if I want to go to sleep and have a midday nap, I queue for LFR, because the mechanic, they're just damage sponges. All the bosses are.
Mm-hmm.
That way it doesn't feel trivial, because there are no mechanics for the most part. And the mechanics that are there don't really matter, because people aren't there to learn how to do the raid. They're there to check a box or to like see the boss fight to say that they did it. Uh, and because that difficulty ramps up so quickly in retail compared to classic, where like there was just one kind of raid, I just think raid leaders are burnt out. I think there's so much involved in, even some heroic bosses. You look at Bridge Twister Avanax from Nerebar Palace.
Yeah.
You have to not just get your group together, but you've got to get your group together. You got to get them with the same weak auras. If they don't have the same weak auras, you have to have a weak aura so that you can put world markers down really quickly. Like there's just a lot involved in that.
That's where I got my weak
people
aura
are burnt out
for release spirit. I like to not release. so, so
it's just raid leading is a lot. And I think that it's that coupled with many different other things. I think that the thing that GFG offers, and I think why we're so focused on good raid leads, and like that is our bread and butter. Jimmy would always say it. I say it. Everyone says what we are known for is the quality of our leads. And it's not because we've went and got people that are world first, raiders, and like it isn't a game skill or anything other than people that want to teach, and people that want to put in the time to explain a fight so that their players know and understand what's going on in that fight. And it's hard to find that kind of person, and that takes a lot of patience on their behalf to be able to go in and teach people. And I think that that's just really rare. I think people are burnt out on it, and I think that the whole mindset that gaming overall has recently of esports has gotten much bigger and is now like a mainstream thing. The Race to World First just wrapped up today, and so everyone is following MDI and Race to World First, and there is a right way to do things. And while people may not be willing to raid lead and to put a group together themselves, people are very willing to join a group and then start to say how that the raid lead strategy is not what Liquid did,
yeah.
And that's just, so you've got somebody who already raid leading isn't an easy thing to do, and there's a lot there, followed by when they do branch out and they put together a group in Group Finder. Your first wipe, you're falling apart. You put together a group with a guild, you get stuck on a wall boss, and it may just be that boss is designed to be a wall, and you need to prog it for a couple you need to prog it for a couple more resets to get item level up, but like it'll kill a guild because, well, Liquid did it this way and you're doing it that way. It's just that whole mindset, I think, is what we try to avoid with GFG. And that's why we have it's not rolled out yet, but where we took our trial process, which basically could take anyone that had never raid led before. We would kind of connect them with various resources to let them trial as a raid lead with the community, get them up to speed, and then they become a full raid lead. With our Raid Lead Academy, we're trying to formalize that a little bit more to, be able to connect leads to those resources, explain how, like, the mindset of a raid lead and the things that you need to pay attention to outside of just like what strategy you use.
Now,
That way, hopefully
do you guys reward your like raid leads in that sense? Do you try to like incentivize or anything like that?
No, because that's a slippery slope for a completely free service, right? That's the big thing for us is we don't have, every raid lead is, totally a volunteer. Everything they do is just completely volunteer. There are no perks or benefits really connected to it, other than it is really nice if you have a bunch of alts to be able to put up a raid and it fills in a minute, right?
Yeah.
So that's a benefit, but I think that's a fair benefit that no one would be upset about.
Yeah, no,
So
I know
there's no real incentive.
I understand that aspect. I think that in a way that should be Blizzard's job. Like if you're going to make raid leader a defining role in the game, that you should make it to where to where raid leads at least stand out in some way to make sure raid leads stick around. Like there should be something along the lines where a raid lead feels like continuing it, other than just their own personal benefit. But that's just my personal opinion on that. Like I just think that sometimes whenever it comes to raid leading, there's not a lot of reason other than their own desire to play it that keeps it going. So it seems like these days what you need more raid leads, not less. And so like the way to do that to me is to have something in the game where it's like, well, the raid lead now, not necessarily like gets like another vault piece and they get more gear or something like that, but something along the lines of the game recognizes that position, even if it's just like an achievement, like, hey, you get this achievement, this title, raid lead, whenever you do a raid lead that particular season or something like that.
Even just what would be interesting to see would be even, which some game developers shy away from this. So like I remember when recommended builds came out in League of Legends, like here's the items that you should build. People push back on it, and Riot didn't implement that system for a long time because they're like, well, we don't want to dictate the meta. Like we have something in mind, but we don't want to, put things too on rails. But even for a while, something like, I don't know of anywhere that you can go within the game files or anything that tells you how many tanks, healers, and DPS you need for various sizes of a raid.
Yeah, and I think it's just understood at this point for long-term players, but
it's understood. Or you go to Mythic Trap or Method or something, and it's outside. And Blizzard, they're taking an aim at these like add-ons and weak auras and stuff recently as like third party, like, oh, it should all be in the game. When so much of the game is around raiding, there's very little in the actual game, like in the adventurer's guide or anywhere, that tells you these sort of things. I mean, sure, all the boss abilities are in, you can read that in the dungeon journal, but it doesn't say, here's an example of composition.
Yeah, like an example video, like here's what it looks like from your position in this role. Here's like a 3-second GIF, just something.
Look, when we get the Raid Lead Academy rolled out and it's a proven concept, maybe old Ian will come knocking on GFG's door and be like, hey, can we put your stuff in the game? No, but to your point though about like systems, I've always said they should make the 21st man like a slot. Like,
okay,
I think that would be really cool to have a slot where like it's like an observer, and give them the ability to like move their camera around,
put down
some world markers. Yeah, because they're already doing it in the Race to World first. We have one of our community leads ran a mythic roster that they've now gone and made their own guild, and they're doing great. But she 21st manned. So like even down at, I want to say it at lower levels because they still got cutting edge, which is not anything to balk at. But like it's a common thing. So they talk about how Augmentation Evoker was supposed to be a support class. Let there be a slot in there where like a console or something over on the side of the boss room that someone interacts with, and
Yeah.
when they do it, like that locks them in there. They get an overhead view, and they can do that, use that to make call outs and put markers down and ping. And I think that'd be cool. Like, talk about a benefit. And then someone maybe that has the knowledge but can't maybe perform like mechanically at a mythic level, that's an opportunity for someone. Let them get a vault roll for it, like,
Yeah, no, I
let
think
them
that you
be
can
on the
make it
loot
to, you
table.
can even make it immersive into the game. Be like, yeah, talk to Khadgar, and they'll teach you like the arcane ways of communication.
Yeah.
And like you can basically talk to somebody, and you can get that overhead or the side view roll, sort of view through someone's eyes, that like just like the spell, and then you can place markers, wherever needed or something like that. That way you can be like a sort of a helpful role. I could definitely foresee that as being a thing.
Sky's a limit too for it as well. I mean, what is the difference between, so if someone, I'm famous for this, if someone, I'm not famous for it, but I do it a lot. If someone says lust in a raid, I just instantly hit lust, even if they're just asking.
Yeah.
Or they'll be like, should we have lusted there? And I'm just like, shift one. Like, I hear lust and I press lust. But like, so we already have that where a raid lead is calling something out. You could even go one step further if you wanted, and maybe it's a toggle in like the raid panel over there, and everyone has to toggle it to enable it.
Mm-hmm.
But if they do, roar, commanding shout,
Yep.
all the raid wide stuff like that, lust, put those on that 21st man's bar and have him or her be the ones that use those kind of raid wide defensives and utilities on top of being able to do the world markers and stuff. So there's options, but I think Blizzard's doing good, I think.
This video is brought to you by Goldcapped. Goldcapped is a community of all the best gold makers with cutting edge gold and making guides. So they are the go-to spot for everything gold making. They are constantly making new guides. They cover the latest and best gold farms, and they're making gold and flipping methods for anybody in World of Warcraft. So anybody who wants to commit their time to making gold or just make simple flips into maximized profit in-game legit. This is legit gold. So by joining Goldcap, you'll get full access to all their guides, their community, their exclusive Discord. And so with that, we also have a special coupon code. It is ShawnSetGO10 for 10% off for your membership, and that'll get you access to everything Goldcap has. And thank you to Goldcap for giving us the opportunity to spread the awareness of something like Goldcap. All right, back to the episode.
We could always find some. I like the direction the game's going in. It feels good, but I've always said, man, the 21st man, that would be such a cool thing. I think to have.
No, I think it could work for sure. I think it's something that's easily like doable, especially when you're trying to. I think you're trying to make. I think ultimately what Blizzard wants is they want the clears for heroic to be more than the last seasons. I think normal is kind of like a given. I don't think people derive the success of the particular season from the normal clears. I think most people get past that stage, but I think heroic clears is a good enough barrier to be like, how many people wanted to do this? Like, because I think you have to want it for heroic. I think you can eventually, you could definitely make it easier. I think but normal and below is typically like it's going to get to a point where it's not that big a deal. So and of course, leading into that, just talking about. I mean, we mentioned that, of course, with MDI and things like, the Race to World First. And of course, congratulations to the winners. But that being said, what do you think of the change, the overall evolving of the game, where we used to have sort of like this big thing this big boss at the end of an expansion, and it took everybody a good portion of time to get there, and it seemed like it was like this big end game that it took us a long time to achieve, whereas now we have these short seasonal pushes, and then 2 weeks later, we're like, okay, just back to business as usual. What do you think about the changes to that, where it's like no longer like this big boss, you are not prepared or something like that? It's just kind of, you are not prepared, but come back next week and you probably will be, it's something along those lines.
I think that it's I think it's clear from, you look at any game, seasons is where it's at.
Mm-hmm.
It's just because gaming, so many people play so many different games, and the way it used to be, I think, I mean, you were things were much more grindy. Um, World of Warcraft back in Classic and Burning Crusade, like you were playing a lot of World of Warcraft. If you weren't in raids, you were farming reputations because you needed the reputation to get attunements for the raids. I mean, everything was a longer path. It wasn't necessarily more difficult. I think everyone will agree that retail, the actual fights and mechanics in retail are far and above more difficult than Classic.
Mhm.
But Classic and earlier WoW was a grind, and you were a World of Warcraft player. I think while it doesn't feel as epic, maybe, as having that one big bad guy, I think it fits the modern day gamer, which is you're going to come in, you're going to play the game for a little bit. If you like it, maybe you play a little bit longer. You're going to accomplish your goal for the season, whatever that is. Is it 2K, 2,500, 3K? Speaking about keys, or is it ahead of the curve? Is it cutting edge? And then once you get that, maybe you dabble here and there in alts, but most likely you're going to go and play the next game that's come out, or another game that started a new season. And I think that that's the healthiest way for it to be.
See, I come from a strange era where I played back in 2007. And so my favorite two things to do were arenas and raid. So I was a very
I won't even touch PvP. PvP is a completely different beast. But yeah, I mean, I think that's just the way it's got to be. I think most people that look back nostalgically on that one big bad, you are not prepared, the one big bad guy.
Yeah.
They don't realize that sort of mindset is what led to the big content drought in WoD.
Yeah.
When you had, like, if you set it up for too long, like it's too big of a risk. I will say though too, like I think we kind of have that with Xalatath across this 3 expansion arc that they're setting up, right?
Right.
And so like maybe we see more of that, and the new raids that they have teased, it seems like is more of the like Burning Crusade-esque, a raid with one boss, then a raid with 2 bosses, or I think 6 bosses is the one that comes first, but a 6 boss raid, then a 1 boss raid, then a 2 boss raid. So maybe they're finding a balance between how it used to be and the truly seasonal nature that it is now.
Yeah. That or they just love dragging it out. One of the two.
Like, it's going to be a balance, right? Like,
yeah.
it's got to be hard to develop, and they develop so much content so quickly. The thing I wish they would focus in a little bit, right? And like that's where I feel like I have criticisms of the way that World of Warcraft is these days. Is sometimes you're just looking at some of the decisions that are made, and you're just like, who asked for that? or to the point, like you mentioned, when they're trying to spoon feed those stories to you, right? And so it's like, it's pet battle week, like we don't have anything, we don't have a weekly other than doing pet battles because Blizzard really wants us to do pet battles. And granted, there are people who love them. We've got a really active member of the community, KG, a super nice guy. I actually met him in person not long ago. They came down to visit the state where I live, and we met up. He loves pet battles. I'm sure he looks forward to pet battle week coming around, but I feel like it's fair to say that 90% of the rest of the player base is like, all right, well, this is an off week. I don't have any weekly quests to do from this person.
Yeah, so. I'm sure there's somebody. And I remember I was running with a guild in season 1, and there was somebody who collected all the toys. Like that was their thing. Like they didn't care about anything else. It's like, what gets me the toys? Like that's what they need. And I'm like, that's insane. I can't even remember a toy when I have it. I think the only ones I tend to remember, like the Legion Hearthstone, maybe.
I just found out like last week. I didn't know that you could use toys to hearth.
Yep.
Yeah. Like I still had somebody ask me, I was streaming, they're like, why do you have a hearthstone in your bag? Clicking on a hearthstone. And I said, what do you mean? How do you get back to the end?
No,
I had no clue.
Not like
I
this.
didn't know that. And I'm sure I've got a toy box full of hearthstones.
Golly.
But yeah, So many.
So I mean, talking about the new expansion and leading to what may be the new raids coming, I think the part that immediately comes to mind, and this is something that I mentioned in the questions that I was going to possibly ask, was old zones, and frankly, I mean, we as much as we love them, dead zones are kind of the natural course of WoW as we move on, as we open up to new exciting zones. Eventually, soon, Dornogal will be a dead zone at some point or another, you know, I imagine. So with that being said, what do you think of, I mean, Blizzard's overall content strategies, less on the community side, more on just like what your thoughts are as Blizzard as a whole, about Blizzard's new strategy of using the old? It seems like there's not a lot of new content with bringing on someone like Chris Menson. It's kind of like celebrating what happened previously and rewriting it. I think there's personally, I think there's a bit of an issue with it, where it's like there's players who appreciated those zones and they don't want to relive those zones. There's a lot of players who didn't want to play classic, who are on the side of you think you do but you don't, because they were like, no, I already did this. I did this when I was 16, 17, 18 years old. I'm near 40. so I don't want to do that again. So what do you think about the overall strategy? I mean, bringing back Wealth of Lost, bringing back some of the old content, and revitalizing Blood Elves and new customizations, new changes. What do you think about just kind of old content being on kind of the forefront of Blizzard's content strategy?
I think it's a good thing. I like it as long as it's executed well, and I think that there are some things. Well, we've seen this before, right? With Cataclysm, like the Barons being split, and like the changes to Thousand Needles, and there was a lot of pushback. I remember it was not super well received.
Oh, there still is, but especially by the collection communities, because they're like, I can't do the content that you want me to collect. Like, what's up?
Yeah, and so like I don't know. Like I think the other piece is, for most players, you do have those zones that are just dead zones. And I think as long as it's done well, and one thing that you have to, at least recently, looking at I mean, look at the zone that we're in now. As much as I don't like the Goblin aesthetic, the Undermine was really well thought. Like Blizzard has been doing an excellent job with their environmental storytelling, and I think if they do that correctly, then it's a good thing, because they're going to be able to focus on, like I mentioned earlier, I wish Blizzard would focus on more things that matter. And to me, it's like, if they're not having to build an entire zone from the ground up, and they're taking a zone that was somewhat underutilized. I mean, Quel'Thalas was, you started there as a Blood Elf, and as soon as you made your way to Undercity, like, you never went back. Of course, maybe some of the collection community, or maybe, you know, some role playing folks, they would go back, but you left the Ghostlands and you didn't really go. You never thought about it again. And so I think it'll be really cool to go back, and if they do it right, and, you know, they've removed the Dread Scar, the land is healed. There's different enemies there. Like it's a different feel. Like, I think that could be really awesome. And I think it's a good direction, because I'm not a game developer. I don't know, but I can only assume if you're not having to build entire zones from scratch, then maybe that frees up more bandwidth for them to focus it on truly new content and make that even better. And the other piece is, WoW is an old game. And there's stuff that needs updating. It's a good way to, maybe it's a good way for them to kind of go down the list, right? And it's like, there's probably some outdated stuff hanging around there, and this is a refresh, and it'll make the game feel newer.
No, 100%. I think that anybody who's on the side of that, I understand the position of not wanting to do it again. But I think overall, it still can be a positive direction for you to take it. I think there's a way to still derive some sort of like something missing, because I mean, frankly, whenever they first release things, you could read a WoW lore book and be like, wait, this was all happening, or this story happened, and that's why this is here. A lot of people tell me in my videos, they'll be like, yeah, if you read this book by this person, you would know this already. And I'd be like, oh, well, Like, I guess like I'm not listen, I read, but only like Lord of the Rings. So I'm not, that takes up enough of your time. Any of my Tolkien fans, you know, it takes up enough of your day to read one series or one universe. I don't need a second universe, so I'm pretty much set with that in general. But leading into more about GFG and talking a little bit more about your community, with that, with a new expansion coming and housing being a large portion of what the sell point of that, is there any plans for GFG to take on housing as a anybody can join, anybody can start, let's build a community together, like separating into small, you know, sub communities, also in game instead of just Discord?
It depends on how it's implemented.
Okay.
I think we will 100%.
Not to make you
We
spill
have
the tea too early or anything like that. Or anything
no,
like
no,
that.
no.
Sorry.
I think it's pretty straightforward. As soon as we heard it rumored, the jokes immediately started of like between the different leads and folks that are, you know each other really well. Like, oh, it's like, well, I don't want to live next to. I'm not gonna say any names because I don't want to make anybody. But everyone ribbing each other, right? And like, you can't join my neighborhood. Like, you need to get off my lot. Like, I think we're excited about it, and it fits really well with the community vibe. I think the thing that we struggle with is what we struggle with right now, just with our guild. I mean, we have 15,000 members. Granted, I'd say we probably, when you look at the server analytics and like who's actually interacting and talking, we're probably around 3,000 to 5,000 like active members at any given time.
Wow.
Because people come and go, right? But like that's a lot, and we have 2 guilds currently in game, and we're capped at 1,000. And I cannot imagine they're going to be 1,000 player, communities. So the administrative burden of trying to put together individual neighborhoods and communities, I think, would be very, very difficult. But for the very active members of the community that have built friendships and connections with other folks within the community, 100%, I think we'll probably have numerous little community developments. I haven't looked at much of the releases on what it's going to be like, but I can only imagine it's probably going to be super limited. I think that's the last I heard was it.
I think
It
it's
would be,
like a 50, I guess like a 50 max or something like that.
yeah. So I mean, with quick math, we like I said, we've got 2 guilds that are full, or that one guild that is always full, another guild that has a little bit less. Like that's a lot of neighborhoods.
Yeah, no, I think it would be nice to do like almost like a battle tag-esque. It's like within a large guild, sort of allowing members that are in a guild and want to still have guild housing, so sort of break off into their own sub neighborhoods, essentially. As long as they break up into those areas, you'd be like, this is the neighborhood for tanks, this is the neighborhood for our leads, this is the neighborhood for, that way you have like somebody in common with, or somebody you could individually choose. I don't know if it's that individually like selectable, but I think it's doable. But yeah, no, for a large community like that, I can't imagine.
I'm worried. I'll just say I'm worried about housing, just because
Really?
I could see it. I feel like there's a delicate balance there that needs to be had between it being something that's just kind of a throwaway and everyone is excited about it for a little while, but then it just becomes another dead zone, right?
Yeah.
I like
Since 2.0.
yeah, so it could be that, like, that's one extreme or one possibility, and then on the other end you have what I think would really hurt the entire expansion, which would be tying it in an effort to avoid it becoming a we don't go there, we're just going to stick to the main hub. You tie it too closely to the actual game and the end game, and to your point, Garrison's too, but like needing to interact with it, needing to go and like you have to keep things rolling, you have to keep like you got to pay your taxes. I don't know, like whatever it is, if they
HOA, here we go.
yeah, if it's implemented in a way that they're trying, like we said earlier, spoon feed us the story, and we're being forced to interact with it, then I think between those two different possibilities, you have what feels to me like a very small sliver of this is a really good feature, and that's why I'm kind of nervous about it.
Yeah, my biggest thing that I don't think they'll ever do, but I like the one thing I'm hoping for that they'll just announce is be like, hey, here's a little bit of utility you can pull out of this. But I know with that comes the double-edged sword of how does it get abused? I'm just thinking personally, like, can I use a coffee maker to like make like a my regular food in my house? Like, is it an interactable object? Like, can I interact with it and do that? But like, as far as like, if I use my bed in my house, can I start out the day with like a 10-minute buff or something like that? Just to where it's like, all right, you know, it's not gonna change the game drastically, but it's gonna change how you experience the game. That way it's like, oh yeah, I go to my house every day because I get a 10-minute buff. That way I can start out my day, say whether it's questing or doing mythics, I get a small little buff. But then scale that right to a guild of or a community of your size, and it's like, everyone get your sleeping housing buff. If you don't have it, you're not invited to raid. So it's like, I know that's where it goes, but like, listen, don't sap my joy, don't take my joy. I need my joy.
Hey, no, well, the good news is it won't go there with GFG, because like our requirements are always very, very low, but there would be some communities that would definitely be like that. No, I mean, I think that I have the same hope you do. Like, let me set my hearth there, and let me, like, I don't get anything necessarily out of being in Dornegal for literally everything I need to do.
Yep.
Like, I don't get anything out of having to, you know, I've got to go between work order person, then fly across Dornegal to the inscription table, and then when I get done with that, I have to like fly in to below the center thing to the blacksmith. Like, just let me, I have two professions. Let me put two profession tables in my house, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, let me have a mailbox that connects me to the work order system or something. There's ways they could balance it, right? Like, maybe there's a little delay on it. Maybe you can use it once a day, or you can like expedite a work order once. I don't know, but like, I think things like that is what I'm hoping for. Little small benefits that, you know, that would be, to me, more beneficial than like standing in front of the bank in Dornegal and seeing a whole bunch of people that I don't recognize. Maybe every now and then. Like, it's such a cool thing when like you happen to see somebody that you know just in the world. I'm hoping with communities, if they take and let us put, you know, maybe if you get 10 people in the community and everyone pays a certain amount, you can get an auction house like in the town square or something, right? Like, stuff like that I think would be really cool, because then when you log in and you go to your house and you walk out front, like, there's one of your raiders, you know, like they're out in front of their house, and you know, those organic interactions, that could be really, really cool.
I think people are still kind of holding on. I think people who maybe are anti that are like holding on to like the one time they saw Wreckful or they saw like Drake Dog like in the game just playing. Like, I think people want to see those big players just out and about, as opposed to their own guild members. But I think overall, you're much more likely to act and respond and do something in game whenever you get to see like just people playing about in the game and interact in a different way. And I think that a lot of people, as much as you have like a friends list, it's like you don't want to bother people. So sometimes when you see people, it's like hey, like, you know, maybe you're able to play and do something. So I think you're right. I think there's a benefit to being able to walk out your front door and kind of have the game naturally put you in front of the people you're playing with. I think for really this entire expansion, it's been a battle between the solo players and the group players, where there's the solo players who are saying, don't judge me, I'm playing solo, but then simultaneously calling group content toxic. And then there's the group players who are like, no, you're a solo player, you need to understand that this is not the end game content truly. Like, so like there's been like this sort of vitriolic battle between the two communities. In reality, they're not too different. Like, in my opinion, I think the solo player is just waiting for another person in order to be a group player. They just don't have that yet, or they don't have the time. And I think that's totally fine. I also think that, you know, delve content and solo content is always just an avenue to get you to the grouped content. It's just at your own pace. So I think it's defining your own pace for yourself. And I think that a lot of people they're hesitant to making that jump because they don't really have like a reason to.
So if you're looking to raid without toxicity and you've been struggling to get into groups, either for keys or for raids, feel free to visit us at discord.gg/GFGpug. We're a cross-realm NaOCE WoW community that's built around making group content fun, friendly, and accessible to everyone. We specialize in learner raids and Mythic Plus support. We have organized events and resources designed to help new and returning players tackle group content in a zero toxicity, no pressure environment. And it's for anyone, whether you're brushing off the rust or whether you're gearing up for your first pull, we got a place for you. We're also on Twitch at twitch.tv/Group Finders Guide and YouTube at the same handle.
And so, talking about that a little bit, I think that a lot of times when it comes into the starting of end game content, you'll see at least these in earlier keys, and then you'll see it maybe at the end of the season where it'll be like N plus, or it'll be a raid finder or raid finder, where it'll say chill group. And I think whenever that comes along, you get one of two things. One, it's not a chill group. It really isn't. That was a lie. And then the second thing is it's just that it means like, hey, we don't have high standards, or our standards are low. Do you think that kind of mindset, and I mean, this is kind of extends to GFG in a way, do you think the mindset of going, hey, we don't have high standards, do you think that, this is meant to be pointed, by the way, do you think that normalizes mediocrity with the player base? Do you think that kind of makes it to where that person never has to do better?
I think the concept of a player base having some level of mediocrity is flawed in itself, because we're playing a game, and I think that the toxicity, you mentioned like solo players are saying, oh, well, group play is toxic. I think the toxicity sometimes boils down to elitism at its core, where there's a correct way to do something and there's an incorrect way to do something. And I think that that concept connects with the concept of you have to do everything, and it creates this, like, that to me is the source of the vitriol. Is like, if you're not getting ahead of the curve, then you're doing something wrong. But then at the same time, like, you can't get ahead of the curve unless you're doing like right now, you got to do 3.5 million DPS. If you don't do 3.5, then like, what are you doing? Like, we're going to kick you from the group. Like, I think that that's the issue. I think people need to realize, the underperformers need to realize that that's fine. Yeah. Not everything is for everyone. We run into that a lot with the community, and it's we started last season doing Mythic learner raids. And for you or others that aren't familiar, our learner raids, like, the core thing with a learner raid is no one ever gets trimmed. Like, no one will ever, like, if it is labeled as a D&D learner, there will not be trimming based on performance, as long as everyone is giving an honest effort. Now, if you're looking for a carry and like you're jumping off the edge you might have to pack a bag, and you can try again the next raid, right? Yeah. But if you're giving an honest effort, no one gets trimmed. And so we go into Mythic learners, and like, Mythic is really hard. That's like saying the sky is blue, right? Like, Mythic is meant to be the absolute pinnacle of it, and we have a lot of players where that's where we have difficult conversations, where people want to achieve at the highest level, and they want to keep going up and up, and they want the community to be everything for them. When in reality, some people have a cap. Like, That's just the way it is. Skill at some point stops at a certain place. I don't raid Mythic. No. I parse well. I'm a decent player. I don't raid Mythic because, to me, like, that, my cap is heroic. Like, I get ahead of the curve and that's it. And I think that that's kind of frowned upon. And that's where, what you're mentioning comes from, is like, does it breed mediocrity? For maybe, but I think that isn't an issue, really. I think the cool thing about GFG, and even Raid Finder to an extent, is there are so many people that never saw Naxxramas in its original form in Classic, because that just they didn't get to that point. Now, granted, that wasn't as much a difficulty thing as it was like really bad timing, and like, there were some issues on Blizzard's part with that, right? But there were people who didn't see that content, and I think that's one thing I'm really proud of with GFG, and why I'm so dedicated to the community, and all of the other leads are as well, is it's really cool to have players that get to see everything that normally wouldn't, because they are what some other members of the World of Warcraft community as a whole would consider mediocre players. Because the fact of the matter is, you don't need purple parses and
Yeah.
a perfect gameplay to get ahead of the curve. Like,
I think it's
you
not
can get
the
ahead of the
argument
curve at a
of,
pretty low bar.
it's not the argument that people think of, you don't pay my sub. It's the argument of, I don't need this parse level, like, in order to achieve what you're asking. Like, I can be subpar. I can be, I can get through a mechanic because I only got it one time. So like, I think there's some people who do get by no matter what, even in high degrees of level of performance. I think the more the game accommodates this as well, but like the more we accommodate people being allowed to make mistakes, the more you can unlock potential instead of cutting off that player at the ankles and going, this is all you can achieve, don't try to achieve more. I think the more that we make it go like, hey, you reach this level, there's a possibility that you can go 3 out of 8 for mythic. Maybe there's a natural stopping point for you, but if you do want to go further, there's a chance if you try. I think there's always that opportunity, and of course, with later on, there's always like gear. There's always a little bit of power creep that helps people, or a little bit of catch up system that helps somebody. So I think there's something that allows you to eventually get to that line. I think the only valid argument I've seen in it is where it's like people who say they get 3K first week of the season versus people who get it at the end. There's not really a distinction between the two, and I think there should be. And I think there should be like, because it's a different mentality. I've never been the mentality of get it finished within the first month or anything like that. I do it when I feel like it. So I'll always kind of participate at the level I feel like. And I think that there's a lot of people who go, no, you should do more. Like if you're gonna talk about these things, you have to be able to do it as well. I'm like, I know I could do it, but I've been doing it for over 10 years now. So I'm tired. I'm tired of this.
You gotta just free yourself from that mindset.
Yeah.
It's like that, to me, that is, people toss around toxicity a lot. I think like that is the core of a lot of the toxicity we get. It is other people in this game that we play. Again, it is a game imposing their thoughts and views on how you should play it.
Exactly.
And I think that that's just like it doesn't matter that much. And it's at the end of the day, it like we're going to go into the next. We had a lot of arguments about the dinar system. Actually, I felt like I was mad that because I don't raid mythic, I was like, it feels crappy that I wanted the, what was it, best in slots off of One Arm Bandit so bad. All of my characters were characters that could use it. Well, I play every class, but the mains that I picked were specifically classes that could use it. I was like, I want this weapon. And then Turbo Boost comes out, and I'm like, I can finally get the weapon. But at that point, this really cool, awesome weapon from Heroic is outperformed by crafted weapons. And I'm like, well, what, like, is it really that big of a deal to like, maybe don't give me the mythic version, but maybe have the dinar pieces be like higher than heroic, right? Like some in between or something. It's like, and then you have people who are heroic rating and they're like, no, like I fought tooth and, or not heroic, mythic rating. They're like, I fought tooth and nail for that boss kill.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want other people having it. And my take on it was like, they're like, it cheapens it. It cheapens my achievement. And in my mind, I was like, well, it probably just makes people buy more boosts to be able to get that. And like, that's the thing that lasts, like the actual achievement of killing the boss, like someone going on Raider.io and seeing like, right now you can tell that somebody bought boosts, but a couple of expansions or a couple seasons down the road, the pool of data gets muddied and you're not splitting hairs and saying, oh, that was person killed OAB boosted, or that person killed it legit. And I like, people are so caught up on the achievements and the difficulty levels. And at the end of the day, it's a game. You go as high as you can, and you need to realize that at some point you cap out. And that's okay, because not everyone can be on Race to World first level, right?
Yeah. And
even then, you look at like even within Mythic as like a set of accomplishments, to your point about 3K first week versus 3K at the end.
Yeah.
There is a galaxy between Liquid and even guilds that are getting it in Hall of Fame that are getting kills, a month or a week or 2 weeks after Liquid did, right? Because not only are there nerfs to the fight, like the fight will 100% now get changed. Things will be balanced now that Race to World First is finished. So not only is there that piece, but there's also the fact that like their gear's capped, like their crest capped, right? So like they're doing a harder fight with less gear. Like that's a completely different world. Like there's always going to be those differences, and we don't have to. It's okay. There's a place for everyone, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
No, I agree.
And it's never going to be comparable.
I agree. I might disagree on that. They have less just because of how much they pay people to have more. But I mean, that is a comparative, splitting hairs. I'm not. People think when I say stuff like that I'm saying it's not a challenge. Listen, it is eons harder than I could fathom doing. Anything spent 16 hours a day doing is not easy. So I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that there's a bit of mess in there, but I will leave that for the Patreon as we close. If you do want to see, or I'm going to be talking to Steve about things like projects that GFG has going on that they're working on, a little bit more about this academy that he's been talking about, as well as some things that they have for plans for Midnight in general, like what they have going on. So if you want to catch that content, please join us for the Patreon. Of course, as per always, if you are a creator or community lead and you're just wanting to share your experience, but also share a unique perspective that I haven't seen before, I love to have these sort of roundtables as well as these one-on-one discussions with community leads, because it gives an opportunity to see maybe a side of WoW you haven't seen before. I found back then D&D, but I found them at a time where I was like, I'm just not destined to ever have a guild or a group that I can do this with. And groups that I did, I would do temporarily, but I'm active duty military. I'm currently overseas. I'm on way different time zones. So it's very difficult for me to have a guild that I can do that with. So GFG was a great opportunity, a great in for me to at least get experience in that content early on. That way I'm not just left out high and dry. So very thankful that this community exists, and I was very excited to share this on the podcast as well. But of course, Steve, I'm gonna let you take the sort of the spotlight here. In a short bit, like what things do you got going on? What are you currently doing in game, and what kind of content are you going to be pursuing in the near future?
Yeah, I mean, our bread and butter is the learner raids and the key event. So that's what we have every single season. Playing the hits, that's what always comes back. Learner raids go all the way through normal, heroic to mythic, and the whole thing is, it's first come first serve. There's no barriers to entry. There's no gatekeeping. Whoever shows up, they get invited down the list. There's no paid advantages, and it's just a fun time. It's a good place to learn, and it's a good place to be able to move up through that kind of those tiers of content. And then the Raid Lead Academy, that's going to be huge, I think. There's so much content about how to do a raid, how to do the boss fights, and how to do the mechanics. Like, we don't want to reinvent the wheel and be Mythic Trap version 18 or however many there are, right?
Yeah.
But there is very little out there other than like a video here and there from Max that may be 3 or 4 years old on like how to raid lead.
Yeah.
And like we talked about earlier, it doesn't show up in anything in game either. So we're hoping that maybe, we got 40 raid leads, all running raids. We have probably 2 dozen raids a week that go off. And so taking that experience and being able to bring that to others and show them how to do it either with us or with their own guild. So it's going to be a really cool new initiative for us.
Well, excited for you guys, and excited to talk a little bit more about this as we close the episode. As per always, everybody, thank you for joining us, and thank you for listening to the podcast. Your support keeps the podcast coming, and it's actually opened a lot of doors to us. So thank you to everybody who supported us, both on the YouTube and on the Patreon so far. As well, as we jump into the bonus episode, we're going to take a little bit of a break. We'll be right back. But with that being said, as per always, we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
Thanks all.